Dr. George, put George
So here's the yes. Yes.
No, but you have grumpy parents.
Jeffrey, did you already invite people up to have a donut or something?
I haven't.
Oh. I think Bill said all that out, leftovers from the men's breakfast.
Okay.
Somebody would like to.
Okay.
He was hoping that people would want a donut.
I'm not gonna have that indoor bathroom. The hot water I'm here.
Put it in the truck. I knew I
How are you?
So they just put it back off.
You heard what Jeff said?
Hours, my phone will, I'll have to go for a fire outside.
You should have heard what Jeff said. You know.
No talent like Jeff. I just want him to.
I'm so glad you did that. You made a great restart class. I needed that.
I'll tell you, let me
Morning.
I don't think it'll be easy.
Leftovers from the men's breakfast? I don't care. Eat through class all the way. Fine with me. Dennis would like a minute or so before we get going. And gonna lead prayer?
I can try.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, well, I mean, there's not too many men here. My plans have changed. I'm supposed to teach next quarter. I need somebody to fill in for me on June 4th, which is the first Sunday of that quarter. So if you want to teach whatever you have on your heart that you feel would be a good lesson, just let me know that you want to teach, and that would be great.
Jeremiah's gonna lead the prayer, so all your prayer requests go to him.
Is it in here or in theirs?
In here.
Friday was not a good day for my family. Kara's gonna have to put her cat down today.
Oh, wow.
It's gonna be real hard on her. It's not gonna be fun for any of us, but, this cat has been through 3 roommates and 3 moves with her, and she just lives by herself, and I'm a little concerned. So just prayers. I also found out Friday my brother could not take his chemo treatment. He had a slight fever, and he had what they call grade 3 fatigue. He could not brush his own teeth.
Wow.
And he couldn't walk into the doctor's office. They had to get a wheelchair for him. So they just put it off for a week. I guess this is not too out of the norm, but, we just want to just keep praying for him and his friend Curtis.
Curtis is taking chemo with him.
Yep, this is just the man he met while taking chemo, so, pray for both of them. This man said, Mark said, I have a bunch of prayer warriors praying for me, and this man said, I don't have anyone praying for me. He said, well, I can fix that. So, and just be with my dad, because this is real hard on him. I have school, which occupies my mind a lot. But he's got nothing other than to sit around and worry about stuff like this. So he needs someone to eat at Roosters with him today after lunch, so. After church, not after lunch. Because I'm going right to Kara's after church, and he said, well, who's gonna eat at Roosters with me? And I said, well, I'll announce it in Sunday school class and see if anyone will take you, be with you then.
Wow.
My mom fell and broke 4 ribs. She's 83, 2 weeks ago now. So I've been back and forth taking care of her. So she's healing. One of her ribs is broken 2 places. So Myrna Smith is her name.
Keep Chris Stewart and Kevin in your prayers. She's home and he's taking care of her. So just prayers for her healing and him.
Anyone else?
Our friend, the Campbells, my friend Nancy, her husband Bob was admitted to the hospital. Everything is still there. They're going to be doing a cath on him on Monday. He's doing okay. So just prayers that they figure out what's wrong and can fix it.
Anybody else? Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, this may get me a spanking, but my mom will have a shot to help her with her pain this week, and just pray that this shot gives her a lot of relief.
About time you get a spanking.
Well, I've got plenty of them.
She probably gave you one after the shot.
When she's good and strong.
Kenny Boyle has a farrier friend whose son was hurt very badly in a ATV turnover accident. And his name is?
Matt.
Matt is the father.
Yeah.
And the son's, remember Matt's son and the family as he heals from his accident. Kenny actually took off with a number of his friends, and he's helping to do all the work that the other farrier had, and sort of a pro bono thing, because the father's been tied up, and just another testament to the character of Kenny Boyle. Good guy.
Yeah. The son's name is Porter Savage. Porter Savage. Mm-hmm.
I got a call this week, a friend of mine that lives in Marion, Ohio. Her name is Joanne Patrick. Her husband, Ron, passed away suddenly. He's had we think a heart attack, and he died at the hospital. He was a healthy guy. We're not sure what happened, but devastating to the family. Her name's Joanne, and her kids are Kyle and Emily.
Anybody else? Jeremiah.
Dear God in heaven, I thank you for this opportunity to come together freely and assemble in your name. God, I pray that our time together is well spent, and we are encouraged by one another, and worship you and learn more about your word and your son. God, I'm thankful for the community that's here, that we're able to share our burdens, and I just want to lift up some names at this time. Be with Kara and her cat, Mark and Curtis, and Jim this time, with his mom, Chris and Kevin Stewart, the Campbells. Pray that Sharon gets some relief. be with Porter Savage, the AT&T accident, all that's around there, and also with Joanne. Now, I don't know the exact details, but I just pray that you be with those loved ones, and that they can ultimately look for you and your name is glorified. Thank you for Jesus, and it's in His name I pray.
Amen.
Okay. Last week, how to love those you hate. Last week we talked about fear and power and how they are closely related. How one group, if they have power over another, then they aren't threatened by them. But if they are, then they try to gain power over them. And one of the solutions of that is to live a cross-shaped life or cruciform life. And we went over some traits of that, and I wanted to finish it up, take about a couple minutes. That to fall. There's really only one more little thing I wanted to talk about, but I think it's very important. But we talked about, naming your fears, and what was it? Oh, practicing obedience or practicing submission, because our Savior learned obedience. He had to learn it himself just like we do, okay? The third point I wanted to get across was, when you live a cross-shaped life, is if you're going to choose a side, and in my life I've tried not to choose sides, but if you're going to choose a side, choose the side of the weak. If you're going to pick toward a side, then you need to pick toward the oppressed. You need to pick toward the losers in life and those who can't take care of themselves. If there is a biblical principle on power and how to use it, I think it's brought out in the Bible that you use power for people who don't have power. And you can do that in many, many, many different ways. And I think that if you're versed in God's Word, you would agree that over and over and over and over again, He talks about the widow, the orphan, the oppressed, the immigrant, etc. So choose a side of the week. Okay, now we're going to get to the final subject, Jacob. And we're going to take it the rest of this class, and then we'll finish up next week. I don't know how many of you are going to be here next week. I will, but I hear it's going to be a massive travel day, so I'm kind of glad I'm not going anywhere. But next week will be our last meeting together for a while. Then I'll be back sometime. It was supposed to be next fall, but I've got to do a lot of classes over the summer to recertify. You have to do that every once in a while. And hopefully this will be the last time in my career. I took my test last summer and passed it, but you think I would know what I was doing after 25, 30 years or whatever. But,
Mason's probably gonna do.
it still make you go back, anatomy, physiology, etc. But anyway, I don't know. Whenever she tells me.
Next spring.
Next spring? Okay. And it's on sin, right? The Temptations?
Temptations, not the singing group.
Not the singing group, okay?
You might be able to work that. You might be able to work that in.
Yeah. If I start singing, you're all going down to the Methodist church, I know that.
No, we'll just shoot you.
Yeah.
Put you out of your misery.
So what we're going to talk about now is Make America Christian Again. And I guess I should give a disclaimer. I always try when I present a class to kind of hide my whatever slant. And a lot of times I'll play devil advocate and I'll ask questions, to fire you up and get discussion going. And but yeah, I can't do it on this one. I've tried. So you'll figure out where I land on this. But it's a lot of opinion, okay? And I just think there's sometimes better ways to do things, and I can be wrong on several things. And if you disagree, please tell me. Good discussion, because there's nothing to get angry about. But make America Christian again, okay? So we're going to start actually in the Bible. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, so I'll turn there.
Chapter what?
15, 1-5. Where are my notes, where they start? Oh, here we go. I took some of this lesson from this book. It's called The Church of Us versus Them, a freedom from a faith that feeds on making enemies. And that's why I chose this subject, making America Christian again, because as we'll get in, the further we go on, a group has a good idea, and they rally around it, and all of a sudden it becomes, if you don't agree with what we're saying, then you're wrong. Okay? And so you're making enemies. You're certainly not loving each other. And I can sit up here and say, okay, this. Look at all these enemies that we're making. We'll get into all that. All right, 1 Corinthians 15. Let's start in verse 22, and we'll read through 26. Who's got that? Go ahead.
For as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive. But each in turn, Christ the first fruits, then, when he comes, those who belong to him. Then the end will come, when he hands over the kingdom to God the Father, after he has destroyed all dominion, authority, and power. For he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death.
Okay. The main part of that section, Arvilla read for us, for he must reign until God has put all enemies under his feet. So if that is true, surely we should see evil being dealt with in a justly manner wherever Christians act out the good news. Do you agree? And we should support things. We should support the government doing Christian things. Do you agree? Okay. If they just happen to do something that's Christian, you know, good job. Now I gotta tell the story of my granddaughter. First of all, she thinks her mama made everything, because she looks around her house and there's quilts and baskets and clothes, food. Mama made this, mama made that. And we drive up to an IKEA. If you've ever been to IKEA, don't. It's in Charlotte, and it's in March, and everything's already blooming. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tree. All flowered out, and it's got 1 million bees around it. Oh, bees, bees. Mama made the bees. And no, sweetheart, God made the bees. Oh, good job, God.
Yeah, but it was like, good job, God.
Anyway, I don't know how I got onto that. But anyway, so we should support the government doing Christian things when they happen to do something like that. And as Christians, we should also be working to bring an end to things like bigotry, injustice, wars, those type of things. Now, here's the questions. Let's just divide the room up, and anybody can talk. From this table, Barry's table over here, here's your question. Should the church seek the help of government in bringing God's justice. And from Jeff all the way to the wall, should the government do the church's work? So, yours over here. Should the church seek the help of government in bringing God's justice?
I say yes. I say yes.
Should the government do
And then
the
what,
church's work?
should the government do the church's work?
Okay?
Why not?
It would be perfect if
Why not?
No, just. Go ahead. Anybody can talk. There's no leader.
It'd be nice if things were aligned, where the government actually was aligned with the right thing, or what people believe. To depend on them to do it is not, that's abrogating our responsibility.
So Chris and I kind of agreed on this. So the government sort of does that already. We have laws. Some of those laws line up with the Bible. Don't kill, don't steal, that sort of thing, right? So our government does mete out justice, it delivers justice kind of based around the Bible. But then there's a whole lot, like Dick said, that does not line up. So unless we agree, it's not going to work.
Rephrase your question once more. Do we count on them
Depend
to
on.
do it?
Should the church seek the help of government in bringing God's justice?
Yeah. In the sense that we don't have the authority to enact laws, to basically make it a part of our society mores. I'd say yes. To the point they aren't aligned, no.
Well, let's go to the left. Should the government do the church's work? Should the government do the church's work?
Dion.
Hey, we speak for you.
All right, feel free.
Dion will speak for herself.
I'm focusing on the word should. So based on the word should, I would say yes.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
The government doesn't just represent members of the church. The government of the United States is supposed to represent all the people. These are not our leaders. These are people we have put into office, and we keep calling them leaders, so they cannot be leaders unless we follow them. Some of them are not Christians, as we all know. They will not help the purpose of the church unless it is to their advantage or fits their agenda. So as you say, should the government? I wish. It's not going to. It is going to get so caught up in red tape, and there's going to be, well, the Catholics do this, and the Mormons do that. Hang on, Mormons aren't Christian. Well, who said? I mean, we get going on down that rabbit hole, we'll never get anything done.
Thank you. All of you?
I think it should be quite simple. Shut up and stay out of the way. I mean, don't get in our way to doing good work, to doing what we need to do. And the problem is the government is getting in the way, little by little, of allowing us to do what we need to do. And I mean, I can't think of a better example than DRT and all the other faith-based organizations that help with disaster and other types of stuff. The government spends a whole bunch of money and does very little, where these groups do a lot more and spend very little money. So, yeah, get out of our way.
But are we okay saying the same thing? Shut up and get out of the people's way who want to have abortions?
Hey, Greg.
Yes, sir.
So I have another question I'm just going to present the question, and because it can go off on all kinds of different directions, but my question is, should the church depend upon what the government provides? I guess what I mean by that is all of the organizations to help, homeless people and things like that. I'm not saying this how I want to say it, but so let me share my thought here. I think sometimes the church becomes too dependent upon the government, as to where I think the church should accept a little bit more responsibility in helping.
You mean like things like, what are they called, non-governmental organizations, NGOs?
I think, now, the church is not dependent on the government in terms of support or anything else, or even underwriting our programs or anything like that. I think what I hear you say is that maybe social programs, some of the things, the infrastructure, the safety net for society is government and not the church. Is that kind of the feel?
Well, that's kind of it. Sometimes I think the church, when they're presented with some type of issue, they might say, well, go seek this. Don't bother us, go seek this. Okay? And that's the respect, I guess I mean this, is that the church sometimes is just easy for us to slough off what maybe should our responsibility be to the government. In some sense, I'm
thinking of widows, orphans,
things like that.
children,
Yeah.
poverty.
Yeah.
And the societal scope of those problems is somewhat beyond the capability. I do agree there probably should be a greater responsibility.
Yeah.
Jeff?
And I don't know if I'm understanding you correctly, but Ronald Reagan one time, speaking to a group of evangelicals, made the statement of resist the temptation of counting yourselves above it all. In other words, that all that government stuff, we don't have time to fool with any of that. He was encouraging the Christian to be involved at the, local, state, and federal level, that it is incumbent upon us to engage in society and make a difference. And I don't know if that's exactly where you were going with this, but there is the temptation to, that's the world. I'm removing myself from all that noise. I've got this to do over here. And that, like I say, it was something I heard Ronald Reagan say to a group of evangelicals, resist the temptation of counting yourselves above it all, but to engage. And I think there is an important role for us when we choose leaders to temper their or review their policies, their positions, their against Scripture, and not just what's best for me, that type of thing.
Thanks, sir. Dave?
So I think when we advocate government taking on more of a role of what we're supposed to be doing, we run the risk of pushing people away from God and being less dependent on they're not dependent on the church because it's the church's job to help in certain situations, and we're pushing them to rely on men in the government. That we run the risk of that creating separation between less faithful people, less reliant on God.
Yes, sir.
I just think we're viewing government wrong. Government is a inanimate object. Okay, the people is kind of where you go off on that tangent. It's not the government that's wrong,
it's the people in place. Because if you think of Nazi Germany, people followed Hitler. The swastika was a religious symbol. So I just feel like you combine the two, and it's like a recipe for disaster, as opposed to the people.
Good, thank you. Randy?
I was just thinking for members of the Church of Christ, it may be a little bit more difficult to influence the government versus where you have a body that has a leadership. Some of the other Catholic Church per se.
Southern Baptist?
Yes, yeah, where they have a more powerful, here we have to look at local, your votes and those type of things. We don't have a larger body that comes in and tries to influence what's being brought on.
Excellent segue, thank you. Excellent comments. All right, we're gonna play Jeopardy real quick. Let's see, so I'll need what, 3 contestants? Jeremiah's 1, Denise is 1, and Anita's 1.
Oh, stop.
Denise will have the board, so your line will, I'll tell you in a minute. Oh, it will be, I'll take, Make America Christian Again for 800, Greg. That's what you'll say. So go ahead. And remember, buzz in, right? Make America Christian Again for 800, Greg.
So, no, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to
You're supposed to say.
Oh, I'm picking a category. Okay.
And it happens to be Make America Christian.
For 800.
Correct. Okay. And then the other two you all got your hands on your buzzers. Jerry Falwell Sr., Moral Majority, Christian Coalition, Family Research Council, Traditional Values Coalition, America Family Association, Focus on the Family. What do they have in common?
They're religious organizations.
I buzzed before you.
She did. She said,
What are conservative religious organizations?
Okay. Any guess?
I didn't buzz that.
You didn't In the early 1980s.
Well, did she win?
They're dancing around it, They hadn't landed a punch yet. These groups started and led by Jerry Falwell Sr., a pastor out of Lynchburg, Virginia. They organized hundreds of thousands of Christians to vote along lines believed to reclaim the Christian moral foundation of the country. The theme among all these groups was that they had to fight to reclaim the United States as a Christian nation. And a direct quote from Jerry Falwell follows: "We must never allow our children to forget that this is a Christian nation. We must take back what is rightfully ours." So what do you think about that? Chris, you here?
Yeah, so I've heard several people, even like within our own like Bible studies, even here, I think maybe Max Sandlin even said, our country really wasn't a Christian nation to begin with. People were fleeing from religious persecution. They came here for freedom to do whatever they wanted. Now, religion has always played a part in our country. Founding fathers, you can see the early documents has God, you can see that thread. And maybe at one time, Christian was more dominant than it is right now. It's definitely in decline right now. But I don't know. It's like some people almost have the idea that like our nation was somehow like chosen by God or supported by God, which there's no there's no biblical proof for that. I mean, Israel is God's people, you know, so the USA, America, I don't know that we were ever necessarily set apart as God's nation.
Other comments? Dennis? Thank you. Very good.
And I totally agree with that statement. The idea is we are a nation of freedom. And we should be free, and a constitution allows for the freedom of religion. And we can choose the religion that we choose to be part of. Case in point, I even have issues with the government prohibiting worship with religions in regards to where somebody gets hurt. I mean, the idea though is we have an ultimate freedom of religion. So if we have an ultimate freedom of religion, every religion should be recognized and protected. Now, don't get me wrong. I look at what the government's doing and say, is that right? I question it, but that doesn't mean I totally agree that we should allow for any type of activity in regards to religion. So, but the idea though is that we were never a Christian nation. Personally, if we were a Christian nation, we probably would not have fought the Revolutionary War. Mainly because if we were a Christian nation, we would be honoring the king, because he was the chosen leader of the country.
Yeah.
So, and that's just one thing. But I'm just saying that, and if you look at our founding fathers, all different types of faiths and ideas and were brought out at that time. Just so happened that Christianity was probably the most prevalent, or some form of Christianity, let's say.
Yes, ma'am?
I think it's a contradictory statement. We're telling our children that this is a Christian nation. Why do we have to take it back? If we're already a Christian nation, we don't have to take anything back. To take back something means that we have lost it, which is what you said at the beginning of this class. We are losing Christianity in this country.
I was going to say, Greg, that I think the statement that we must fight to take back what is rightfully ours sounds American. It doesn't sound Christian at all. I mean, it doesn't line up with what Jesus told us to be last and to serve. That doesn't say how to be a Christian at all. So, I mean, I disagree with that statement, maybe what they were doing, but that statement doesn't sound very good.
Excellent. Go ahead.
And this kind of gets to the example of freedom. Last time I was in DC, I'm there with my family, we're walking around, and I went to my kids, I said, isn't this a great country? Everywhere you go, somebody's protesting something. And you may not agree with what they're protesting, but guess what? They have the right, they have the freedom to protest. And that's the way I want religion. You have the right and you have the freedom to practice the religion you choose to. So, yeah, there's bad things about it, but guess what? There's bad things if we go the other way too.
Yeah, we lived there a long time ago, and lots of protests. It was pretty cool, I thought. But,
well, actually, I mean, the freedom to choose whatever religion you wanted to really began in 312 AD with the Nicene Creed, where Rome was the controlling government, and the Nicene Creed broke free of that you can choose your religion.
Yeah. David?
So, John Adams said that our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. So he stated that we are a Christian country. We are a religious country. And he said wanted to say morality and virtue are the foundation of our republic and necessary for a society to be free.
Okay, good.
So if we're not a religious country and we're not a virtuous country, then we can't be free.
This follows right into, there's a little more history here. Before the Civil War used to really rip things apart. Some of our doctrine comes because of that, but I'm not going to get into that. Before the Civil War, there were many, many Christians there was no disjunction between personal salvation and social transformation. What I mean by that, personal salvation, right with God, and the things that, you have to do. And social transformation, working against slavery, women's rights, voting rights, child labor laws, industrial safety, humane treatment of the mentally ill, these broader expectations of what it means to be a Christian. And Christians prior to the Civil War, these things are intertwined together. That's just what you do, And then along comes the Civil War. And then all of a sudden you have fundamentalists, who later became evangelicals, and then you have mainline Protestant churches, who later became the progressives. This side over here, I never can remember this. Here, believe.
Your believers and confess and be baptized.
You know that.
Drilled into my
That way.
head.
That's what's important. No. Over here, this is what's important, and this is what it means to be a Christian. Whatever thing in society needs transforming, and you can name a lot of them. And so it's already dividing. And there was this back and forth contention all the way up through the end of World War II. And it's divided. And it's divided still on geographical. Amazing. And then the 1960s hit. Turbulent times. 60s, 70s, the civil rights, Martin Luther King Jr., the Kennedys, Vietnam War, and everything that went with that. I know some of you can't speak to that. But let me ask you a question. You know what? We've had some turbulence in the last few years. Do you think it's anything? Can you even compare it to the 60s and early 70s? Those of us that were there. I think this is just compared to back then. I hear people say, the world has never been in worse shape. What do you think was worse? The 60s or 70s or now?
Civil War.
Or so, yeah.
Well, in terms of social unrest, certainly the 60s or 70s were much. But in terms of general societal morality, I would say we've been in decline since. So there's a distinction there, and your division of this side and the other side, either or, you forget the possibility of the and. And this and that. Go back to where you were before.
Or neither.
Intertwined.
Well, I think part of what makes it worse now is that because we are literally, we're witness to every single little thing that happens. Everything. We have our phones, we have our, everything is so accessible that maybe it was really, really bad back then. We just didn't see it, I mean, we didn't have all these social media and all this other stuff. So I think that's what makes it worse now.
Any other comments?
Where can we pick up our Mecca hats?
MAGA hats?
Mecca.
Oh. Next week we'll